guys, and welcome back to the show. So in the last video we looked at how to upload a file using Flask, but the file wasn't saved in the database. The file was saved on our computer. So in today's video we'll be looking at how to basically save the file into a database and then retrieve the file from the database. So imagine you had like a store where you sold a book, right? You can have like a system where a user can log in to your store and then buy your book. And if they buy your book, they will be able to download the book onto their system, something similar to that. All right. So let's look at how let's look at what we did the last time. So let me take a screenshot of this. This will be the file that we'd like to upload, and then we will see what we did last time, and then we can take it from there. All right, so last time we had this, right? So you click on upload, it says no file selected. Because no file has been selected, you click on choose file, then you can select this, open, upload, and then it redirects you to the downloads page. Now the file that we uploaded was saved in a directory on the desktop. So if I go to the desktop, then I go into this directory. If I cd into where to upload to, you can see that I do have the file saved over here. So what we're going to do is to basically save this file into a database rather than saving it in a directory on our local machine. How we're going to do this is basically, instead of saving the file here to our local machine, we will create a database module and then save the file into our database. And how we do this in Flask is by creating a class or a module and then using that module to basically save the file into a database. But before we can do this, I need to install Flask-SQLAlchemy because that's what I'll be using as the database. So I'll come over here and then type in Flask-SQLAlchemy. What you need is Flask-SQLAlchemy. Click on this to copy. Go back to the terminal. Then I'll paste this over here. Okay, so I do have Flask-SQLAlchemy, but I just wanted to show you guys how this is done. Okay, if I come back here, what I can say is that from Flask SQLAlchemy, import SQLAlchemy like so. So after importing SQLAlchemy, what I now need to do is to create a class or the module and then use that module to save the file into the database. So I'll come over here and I'll say class. I'll call the class item. The class will take in a DB, so I need to create an instance of SQLAlchemy. So I will say DB will be an instance of SQLAlchemy, then I can pass it the app like so. After passing it the app, what I need to do is to set the SQL database URI to a URL which will reference, the database. All right. So what I want is this Flask-SQLAlchemy URI, and then I'm going to use this. All right. So I'll copy this whole thing like so, and then go back to the code and paste this in. So I'll come over here, then I'll paste that in. So I've set the Flask-SQLAlchemy database URI to SQLite example.SQLite. Okay. Having done so, I can now say that db.module. So the module will have a column, ID, a name, and a data, which will be the data that we would like to store. The ID will be db.column, db.integer, and if you're storing the name in the database, you want the name to be unique, right? You can set unique to true, and you can set nullable to false. Then I'll copy this and create a last column, but I'll give it a name called data, and this data will be db.column, db.large binary, like so. So what have we done so far? So we've gone ahead, installed Flask-SQLAlchemy, we've imported that into the application, we've created an instance of the SQLAlchemy and passed it the application, which is the app of type Flask. We've set the configuration of the Flask-SQLAlchemy database URI to this URL, and then we've created a module which has an ID, name, and data. Now, what I'm going to do is to create this database tables and columns, like create it, all right? I can do that by using the db.createAll method. So I can go into the terminal and say Python. I can say from app import db. Then I can say db.create_all like so and enter. Now, as you can see, I've created the database. I've created example.sqlite file in the application. Now that we have this, the next thing I need to do is to comment this one out. So I'll go ahead and say that new file, what I want the file to be will be this item, which is the module that I've created, right? I'll create the instance of the module, and this item will have a name. The name will be the file name. So if the file name is a.png, that will be the name of the file, all right? And how do I get the file name? I get the file name from the file, all right? So I can say file.filename, like so. The second thing that I need is the actual data in the file. So I can say that data will be file.read, which will read the contents of the file. Now that I have this, I can say db.session.add. I'll add the new file, then db.session.commit, like so. Okay. And then instead of redirecting to the download page, I'll redirect to the index page. So I'll redirect to the index page because I would like to do something else, and then we can download from the downloads page. All right. So now that has been done, let's do one more thing. Let me rename the screenshot that I took, and then let's try and save that. So now I have renamed the file. Let me start the application and let me save this file into the database. So I'll come over here, exit, I'll do flash run, I'll go to the URL, and now let's try and upload an image. So if I click on this, I'll click on file one, I'll click on open, then I'll click on upload. It says file uploaded successfully. So I know that the file has been saved into the database. All right. Now let's find a way to actually see the names of the file that we've saved in the database, that we can create something that will let us download the file from the database. To do this, I will change the name of this root of this method over here. I'll change this to files and slash files, which will have like all the files that are inside of the database. Inside of the template directory, I'll create a new file called files.html. Then I'll create one more called download.html, like so. So for the next part of the tutorial, I've got a snippet of what we actually need to do so that we don't waste a lot of time writing everything up. So I'll go ahead and copy the snippet, paste that in, and we can go through the code and see what I did. All right, so as you can see, let's forget about this for now, and let's look at the files over here. So if you go to this root, what I'm doing is that I query the database. So with items, so with item the query.all, I get everything from the database, and I basically pass that to the files.html template. So if I go to files.html, what I'm doing is that I'm saying that look through all the items or all the content in the database, get all the items name, split it. So when you split the item, if you remember what we did with the right split, I'm splitting it at where the dot is, and I'm getting just the file name. So if I have file.png, I don't want the png part of the file. What I want is just the file name. So if I had rumble.png, I don't want the .png. What I want is Rumble, which will be the file name, which will be the file, which will be the name that I would like to display on the files page. So if I go back to the browser, if I go to downloads page, as you can see, I've got file one. That is the name of the file that I basically saved into the database. If I create another file, which is this file that I've created, I'll call it Rumble. I'll go back to home, choose, I'll select this file, open, then I'll click on upload. File has been saved. If I go back to downloads, as you can see, it says Rumble. right? So that is the name or the file name, the name section of the file that I would like to save. So that is what this is doing. And then I've got a URL which directs or which sends you, when you click on it, it takes you to URL for downloads. And what URL for download is doing is that take me to the URL of this download. And what is download? If I go to app, download is this method over here. So it will take you to the URL or the downloads page, right? And as you can see, the downloads page requires an ID. So I've passed it the ID, and the ID is the item that I have over here, right? Item.id, which we get from the module. So that is the ID. So that's basically what's happening here. Now, the important thing is the download method. So for the downloads, what I've done is that I've created an instance of the module, and I'm saying that filter the module by ID, and the ID that I would like to filter the module by is the ID that I pass to the download route. So if I go to the file, okay, when I click on the download link, I've passed the ID to this route. So that is the ID that I'm using. I pass it the ID, I query the database by the ID, then I get the first item that I find in the database with that ID. And what I'm doing next is that I'm saying that send file. So send file is an API which is given by Flask. It lets you send file. If you check the Flask documentation, so basically it lets you send contents of a file to the client. So that's what the send file is doing. What it takes as a parameter, it takes as a first parameter the content that you like to send, the MIME type, as an attachment, which is a boolean which can be true or false, attachment name, which is in my case the file name, and other things that we're not even interested in. So that's what the send file method does. And you can see we need the bytes IO as well over here. I'm saying that send file, what I would like to send is byte IO, right? The byte IO, then I've passed it the data, so item.data. So this is the module, and I'm saying that the module that you found, was it the first one with the ID that you found? And the item.data is basically this data, right? The bytes that I have stored in the database. I pass it that. The MIME type is image PNG. As attachment is true. And then the attachment file name is item.name, which is basically the name of the item. So it will be something.png. So that is basically how the download thing works. So now if I come back here, right, and I click on the downloads page, then I click on download, as you can see over here, it has been downloaded. File1.png has been downloaded, and it has been downloaded into the downloads directory. Over here, I've got file1.png. If I click on it, it is basically the file that I took a screenshot of. So that's basically how you can upload a file, store the file in a database, and then retrieve the file from the database. So a recap of everything that happened in this section. So what we did when we started was that we had to install Flask-SQLAlchemy, right? Because we needed a database to store the file into. Then we created an instance of the database using db is equal to SQLAlchemy. Then we passed the app to the database. Then we give it the database URI. Then we went on to create a module called item with an ID, name, which is the name of the file, data, which is the content of the file that we would like to store into the database. In this instance, it will be db.large binary, which will be binary data that we like to store. As you saw in the last tutorial, we were storing the file onto our computer, but this time around, we would like to store the file into the database. So we went on to create an instance of the module, passing it the file name and the data that we like to store. I added that to the database, then I saved that into the database. We then went on to display this on a view template, but that is not really needed. You can decide to just go straight to the download. I just made it so that you just see how everything looks. So what this does, okay, is this. Is this page basically what you see on this page, just so you know that I'm clicking on downloads and the file is downloading. So that is what that does. Then we have download, which is what we wanted to do. You pass it an ID, right? You pass an ID to the method. Using that ID, I go into the database and give the first item that I find in the database with that ID. Then I send you the file with that ID. Okay, send file was imported from Flask, as you can see, and then bytes.io is something within Python. You don't need to install anything to get that. So over here, I'm saying send file. This is the file that I would like to send, which is in bytes. So it converts that. This is the MIME type, which is image/png. As attachment is set to true, and then attachment file is the file name. And if I come over here, as you saw, I can choose a file, which will be this screenshot over here. I can click on this, open, upload, go to downloads page. The screenshot, as you saw, is here. I can click on download, and then it has been downloaded into the downloads page. I hope this makes sense and you now understand how to upload a file, store the file into the database or a database. It could be PSQL, it could be MongoDB, it could be any database. You just have to connect to that database and how to retrieve that data from the database. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.